A desperate German Shepherd mother begs a cop for help, and what happens next will break your heart. On a lonely back road in the middle of nowhere, this officer thinks he's just helping a lost dog. But what she leads him to will shatter everything he thought he knew about his quiet town. This isn't just an animal in distress. She's a mother on a mission, and she's hiding something no one's ready for. As secrets rise from the shadows and power starts to push back, one man risks everything to uncover the truth. But how far will he go when the people he thought he could trust are the ones behind it all? What did this dog see? And why is someone willing to silence her forever? You being here is a reminder. The quiet acts of love and kindness still matter. If you hold space for compassion, you're already part of this community. The summer heat pressed down like a heavy blanket as Deputy Charles Raleigh guided his patrol car along the winding back roads of Parrish County, Louisiana. Sweat trickled down his neck despite the struggling air conditioning. These lonely routes had become his regular beat since the department pushed him aside, punishment for speaking up about things better left unsaid. His weathered hands gripped the steering wheel as he rounded another bend, thoughts drifting to the stack of ignored reports on his desk. That's when he saw her, a German Shepherd bursting from the thick brush straight into his path. Charles slammed on the brakes, tires skidding on loose gravel. The dog didn't run away. Instead, she planted herself in front of his vehicle, barking with fierce intensity. Her ribs showed through her dull coat, and dried mud caked her legs. But it was her eyes that caught Charles's attention, wild with desperation and something that looked unsettlingly like human urgency. "Easy there, girl," Charles said softly, stepping out of his car. The summer air hit him like a furnace. The dog's barking grew more insistent, and she darted a few steps toward the dense tree line before looking back at him expectantly. 23 years on the force had taught Charles to trust his gut. Something wasn't right. The dog's behavior was too purposeful, too desperate. He grabbed his flashlight and radio from the car. "This better not be a wild goose chase," he muttered, following as the shepherd led him off the road. She moved quickly through the undergrowth, pausing occasionally to make sure he kept up. The humidity was suffocating under the thick canopy of trees. After about 10 minutes of pushing through brambles and Spanish moss, they emerged into a clearing. Charles' breath caught in his throat. The old Beaumont sugar mill loomed before them, its rusty machinery and crumbling brick walls a testament to decades of abandonment. The dog's barking changed to low whines as she led him toward a side entrance. Charles drew his weapon, every instinct on high alert. The metal door hung crooked on its hinges, and the air coming from inside carried a musty, sour smell. "Police officer," he called out, sweeping his flashlight beam across the shadowy interior. The dog darted inside, and Charles followed, his footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. The beam caught movement, the shepherd pawing at something in the corner. What he saw there made his blood run cold. A small figure lay crumpled on the floor, hands bound behind her back with zip ties. Long blonde hair covered her face, but Charles recognized her immediately from the missing persons report that had crossed his desk 2 days ago. "Junie? Junie Harlan?" His voice shook slightly as he holstered his weapon and knelt beside her. She was breathing, but unconscious. A large bruise darkened one side of her face. Charles grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Raleigh. I need immediate medical assistance at the old Beaumont sugar mill. I've got Junie Harlan, 10 years old, unconscious but breathing. Possible head trauma." The dog collapsed beside them, her sides heaving with exhaustion. Now that they were still, Charles could see the signs clearly. The swollen teats, the protective instincts. She was a nursing mother, but there were no puppies in sight. As he waited for backup, Charles gently cut away Junie's restraints and checked her vital signs. The German Shepherd never took her eyes off the girl, whining softly. Her maternal concern was palpable, touching something deep in Charles's heart. "You did good, girl," he said quietly, reaching out to pat her head. She accepted the touch, but remained focused on Junie. "You're a mama too, aren't you? Where are your babies?" The dog's eyes met his, filled with the same desperate urgency he'd seen earlier. Charles felt a chill despite the heat. Whatever was going on here, finding Junie was just the beginning. This devoted mother had risked everything to save someone else's child, but her own puppies were still out there somewhere. In the distance, sirens began to wail. The dog's ears perked up, but she didn't move from Junie's side. Charles kept one hand on the girl's pulse, the other resting protectively near his weapon. His mind was already racing, connecting dots he'd previously ignored, the string of missing dogs in the parish, the rumors about illegal breeding operations, and now a kidnapped child. Something dark was happening in Parish County, and somehow this brave, exhausted mother dog had just handed him the first real thread to pull. The small conference room at Parish County Sheriff's Department buzzed with excitement. Charles stood uncomfortably against the wall, watching his colleagues pat each other on the back. Someone had ordered pizza, and the smell of pepperoni mixed with stale coffee. "Our hero of the hour," Sheriff Martinez boomed, clapping Charles on the shoulder. "The Harlans can't stop singing your praises, Raleigh." Quick thinking, following that hunch, Charles shifted his weight. "About that, sir. The German Shepherd that led me there." Right. Martinez waved his hand dismissively. "Animal Control's been notified. They'll handle any strays in the area." "Sir, I don't think you understand. That dog deliberately—" "Raleigh," Martinez's smile tightened. "You found the girl. That's what matters. Let's not complicate a win with irrelevant details." Charles felt his jaw clench. Down the hall, he could see Junie Harlan through the window of the interview room. The 10-year-old sat hunched in her chair, staring at her untouched glass of water. Her parents hovered nearby, their faces drawn with worry. "She still hasn't said much," Detective Palmer reported, joining them. "Trauma, the doctors say. Could be weeks before she opens up." "What about the sugar mill?" Charles asked. "That place has been abandoned for 20 years. Perfect spot for—" "For what?" Martinez cut in. "The girl's safe. Her kidnapper, probably long gone. Sometimes a win is just a win, Deputy." The warning in his tone was clear. Charles thought of the German Shepherd's desperate eyes, her swollen teats, the way she'd collapsed after leading him to Junie, as if completing an impossible mission. After his shift, Charles drove back to the mill. The dog was exactly where he'd left her, curled up in the shade of an old loading dock. She lifted her head as he approached, ears alert but body weary. "Hey there," he said softly, crouching down. "Thought you might be hungry." He pulled a sandwich from his lunch bag, unwrapped it slowly. The dog watched him warily, but inched closer. Up close, he could see old scars beneath her matted fur. She wasn't just a stray. She'd been through something. "You're quite bristly, aren't you?" he murmured as she delicately took the sandwich. The name stuck in his mind. Bristle. It suited her. 20 minutes later, they pulled into Parish County Veterinary Clinic. The evening sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. A bell jingled as Charles held the door for Bristle, who followed him cautiously inside. "We're actually closing up," called a voice from the back. A woman in blue scrubs appeared, auburn hair escaping from her ponytail. She stopped short when she saw them. "Oh, Deputy Raleigh? You know me. Quinn Baylor." She smiled slightly. "Everyone knows you today. The Harlan girl." Her eyes dropped to Bristle, professional concern immediately replacing her smile. "Is this—" "The dog who found her," Charles confirmed. "She's nursing, but no puppies in sight. Something's not right." Quinn knelt slowly, extending her hand. Bristle approached, allowing a gentle examination. "Poor girl's been through hell," Quinn murmured. "These scars, consistent with breeding mill conditions. And look at her paw pads, worn raw from escape attempts." Charles felt his suspicions crystallize. There have been reports of missing dogs in the parish, high-end breeds mostly. Quinn's green eyes met his, sharp with understanding. "And now a kidnapped child found at an abandoned mill." She stood, brushing off her scrubs. "The clinic's officially closed, but I could stay late. Run some tests, get her cleaned up." There was something in her tone, a quiet determination that matched the gnawing feeling in Charles's gut. Here was someone else who sensed the wrongness beneath the surface. "I'd appreciate that," he said carefully. "Seems like everyone else is ready to file this away as a happy ending." "But you don't think it is?" It wasn't a question. "No," Charles admitted. "I think it's just the beginning." Quinn nodded, already gathering supplies. "Let me get her started on some fluids. Then maybe you can tell me everything you saw at that mill." Bristle settled onto a blanket Quinn provided, accepting her gentle touch. Charles watched them, feeling an unexpected warmth despite his unease. Here in the quiet clinic, with its clean floors and organized shelves, the chaos of the day felt distant. But he couldn't shake the image of Junie's silent stare, or the echo of Martinez's dismissal. Somewhere out there, Bristle's puppies were waiting, and Charles had a sinking feeling that finding them would uncover something much darker than anyone was prepared to face. Quinn returned with a chart, her face composed but her eyes bright with purpose. "All right, Deputy. Start from the beginning." Quinn's gentle hands moved methodically over Bristle's thin frame, her expression growing more troubled with each discovery. The German Shepherd lay quietly on the examination table, her trust hard-won through Quinn's patient approach. "She's severely dehydrated," Quinn reported, reaching for an IV bag. "Look at how her skin stays tented when I pinch it. And these gums are so pale. She's definitely anemic." She carefully inserted the needle into Bristle's front leg, securing it with medical tape. Charles leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "How long has she been without proper care?" "Days at least." Quinn's fingers probed along Bristle's swollen mammary glands. "She's been nursing recently, I'd say within the last 24 hours. But she's clearly malnourished. No mother dog should be this thin while nursing." Bristle whimpered softly as Quinn's examination continued. "Easy, sweet girl," Quinn murmured. "I know it hurts." She paused at the dog's shoulder, frowning. "Deputy, come look at this." Charles moved closer. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, he could see what had caught Quinn's attention. A fresh surgical scar, barely healed, about 2 inches long. "That's not a standard veterinary incision," Quinn said, her voice tight. "Someone deliberately cut into her. And recently." She reached for a handheld scanner, running it over Bristle's body. After several passes, she shook her head. "Just as I suspected. No microchip." "Could she have never had one?" "Not likely. See how the scar is positioned? That's exactly where a chip would be placed. Someone removed it to hide her identity." Quinn's green eyes flashed with anger. This wasn't some backyard breeding operation. This was organized, methodical. Charles pulled out his notebook. There have been other missing dogs reported in the parish. Started noticing the pattern about 6 months ago. Mostly purebreds, valuable breeds. German Shepherds, 3 in the last 4 months, plus 2 golden retrievers, a Rottweiler. He flipped through his notes. All from different areas, but within 50 miles of each other. Quinn stroked Bristle's head thoughtfully. Professional breeders usually microchip their dogs. If someone's stealing them for breeding, they'd need to remove those chips. She grabbed her laptop from the counter. "Let me check something." Her fingers flew over the keyboard as Charles watched. Bristle dozed on the table, the IV slowly replenishing her fluids. "Here," Quinn said finally. Last year, 3 veterinary clinics in Louisiana reported break-ins. Medical supplies stolen, including surgical equipment and microchip scanners. She turned the screen toward Charles. One of those clinics was just 20 miles from that sugar mill. Charles felt the pieces starting to click together. So someone's running a sophisticated operation, stealing valuable dogs, removing their chips, using them for breeding. He paused, his mind going back to the mill. But why was Junie there? Maybe she saw something she shouldn't have. Quinn stood checking Bristle's IV. Or maybe whoever's behind this isn't just trafficking animals. The implication hung heavy in the air. Charles thought of Junie's silent stare, the way Bristle had desperately led him to her. The mill would be perfect, he said slowly. Remote location, lots of space, old outbuildings. And who would investigate strange noises from an abandoned property? Dogs barking wouldn't raise any alarms. Quinn's face was grim. They probably moved everything after you found Junie, but there might still be evidence. Martinez shut down my request to search the property, said it wasn't relevant to the kidnapping case. Charles ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Department's treating it like a random crime of opportunity. But you don't believe that. And neither does Bristle. He looked at the sleeping dog, her body finally relaxing under proper care. She knew exactly where to find that girl. She's trying to tell us something. Quinn was quiet for a moment, absently organizing supplies. You know, she said finally, I have some vacation days saved up, and I'm pretty good at documenting evidence, especially anything medical. Charles studied her carefully. This could get complicated, dangerous even. I watched my brother die because people ignored warning signs, Quinn said quietly. I won't do that again. Not when someone needs help, human or animal. Their eyes met in understanding. Outside, the summer night pressed against the clinic windows, cicadas singing their endless chorus. Inside, under harsh lights that showed every scar and shadow, two people made a silent agreement to follow wherever Bristle's trail might lead. First thing tomorrow, Charles said, I'll pull every missing dog report from the past year, see if we can establish a pattern. Quinn nodded, already making notes in Bristle's chart. I'll reach out to other clinics, see if any of them treated dogs with similar injuries or removed chips. Someone had to notice something. Bristle stirred on the table, her eyes opening to watch them. Despite her exhaustion, there was an intensity in her gaze that Charles had come to recognize, the look of someone who carried a truth too heavy to bear alone. The morning sun streamed through the clinic windows as Charles spread out a stack of reports on Quinn's desk. Bristle lay nearby on a thick blanket, watching them intently while nursing a bowl of specially prepared food. Here's what I found on that breeder, Charles said, pointing to a police report. Elite Shepherds, run by a woman named Margaret Chen, reported 3 breeding dogs stolen 4 months ago, including one that matches Bristle's description exactly. Quinn leaned in, scanning the document. Did they have photos? Charles pulled out a glossy show picture. The German Shepherd in it stood proud and healthy, but the distinctive white marking on her chest was unmistakable. That's our girl before all this. Bristle's ears perked up at their intense focus on the photo. Quinn knelt beside her, gently scratching behind her ears. No wonder you're such a good mom. You were a champion. Chen's report says the dogs were taken during a break-in. Security cameras disabled, locks cut professionally. Charles shuffled through more papers. But here's where it gets interesting. 2 weeks before the theft, her property got cited for code violations. Health department, building inspector, even the fire marshal. All in the same week. Harassment? Quinn asked, returning to her chair. Looks that way. Chen tried to fight it, but suddenly her bank called in her loans. She had to sell, at a fraction of the property's worth. Charles pulled out a deed transfer. Guess who bought it through a shell company? Eldrick Boone, Quinn read, her expression darkening. The name keeps coming up. Charles nodded grimly. I did some digging. In the past 2 years, Boone's companies have acquired 6 properties following similar patterns. Sudden inspections, financial pressure, forced sales. 3 were kennels or breeding facilities. And the sugar mill? Purchased 6 months ago through another shell corporation. On paper, it's scheduled for demolition. Charles rubbed his tired eyes. But utility records show power and water usage spiked right after the purchase. Quinn started connecting dates on a notepad. So they steal valuable breeding dogs, remove their chips, force legitimate breeders out of business, and use abandoned properties for their operation. She looked up at Charles. But where do they sell the puppies? That's where it gets murky. I found shipping manifests for livestock being transported out of state, but the documentation's sketchy. He hesitated. And there's something else. Boone has connections all through the department. Campaign donations, consulting fees, property deals with retired officers. Is that why your captain shut down the investigation? Charles's jaw tightened. I confronted Martinez this morning, told him about the pattern we found. He stood up, pacing the small office. He didn't just dismiss it, he threatened to pull my badge if I kept pushing. Said some things are better left alone. Quinn watched him carefully. You think he's involved? I think Boone's got half the parish in his pocket. The kind of operation we're looking at, it'd need protection, political cover. Charles stopped at the window, staring out at nothing. And now we know why Junie won't talk. Who'd believe a kid over someone like Boone? Bristle whined softly, drawing their attention. Her eyes held that same desperate intelligence that had first caught Charles's notice. We believe her, Quinn said firmly. And we believe you, girl. Charles turned back to the desk, gathering the papers. Problem is, believing isn't enough. Boone's got lawyers, politicians, probably judges. Even if we found solid evidence, they'd bury it, Quinn finished. She stood up, determination setting her features. So we need to find something they can't bury. Something public enough that even Boone's connections couldn't hide it. That's a dangerous game, Charles warned. People who cross Boone tend to have accidents. Quinn met his gaze steadily. My brother died because people were too afraid to stand up to power. I won't let that happen again. She glanced at Bristle. Besides, we're not alone in this fight. Charles felt something shift in his chest. Respect, admiration, and maybe something more. Here was someone else who understood that some fights were worth the risk. All right, he said finally. But we do this smart. No official reports, nothing through channels that could tip them off. He pulled out a fresh notebook. We'll need to track shipments, follow money trails, find witnesses who'll talk. And find those puppies, Quinn added, reaching down to stroke Bristle's head. They're evidence, too, and they're running out of time. The German shepherd's tail thumped once against the floor, as if in agreement. Outside, the Louisiana heat pressed against the windows. But inside, plans were taking shape. Careful, quiet plans that would have to be strong enough to crack the foundations of Eldrick Boone's empire. The summer heat had turned Quinn's clinic into a makeshift command center. Maps and documents covered every surface, and the wall calendar showed 2 weeks had passed since Bristle's desperate highway encounter. Charles stood at the window, watching the German shepherd pace restlessly in the fenced yard. She knows we're getting closer, Quinn said softly, coming to stand beside him. Look how agitated she's been today. Charles nodded. The dog's maternal instincts hadn't faded. If anything, they'd grown stronger. Got something from my contact at the Department of Agriculture, he said, unfolding a wrinkled paper from his pocket. Records of livestock transport permits. 3 separate shell companies, all linked to properties Boone acquired. Quinn leaned over the document, her auburn hair brushing his shoulder. These routes, they all converge near the old Sweetwater district. Yeah, and look at the timing. Shipments every 2 weeks, always after midnight. Charles spread a county map across her desk. The trucks take different roads, but they all end up in this 10-mile radius. Where the old sugar plantations used to be, Quinn mused. She traced a finger along the back roads. Most of those properties are abandoned now. Perfect cover for whatever they don't want found, Charles finished grimly. I talked to Martinez's former partner yesterday. He'd been investigating reports of dogfighting rings last year before getting reassigned. Said he kept hearing whispers about some compound out there, but could never pin it down. Quinn's green eyes narrowed. Dogfighting. But Bristle doesn't show those kinds of scars. She's a purebred champion. They were using her for breeding. Maybe it's both. Breed the valuable dogs. Use the culls for fighting. The words tasted bitter. and God knows what else. An operation this size, this protected, they wouldn't stick to just one racket. Quinn sank into her chair, running tired hands through her hair. That's where Junie fits in, isn't it? The social worker said she's starting to talk a little, mentioned something about bad men hurting dogs before clamming up again. Charles felt his jaw tighten. She must have stumbled onto one of their dumping grounds, saw something they couldn't risk getting out. He thought of the terrified girl they'd found, the rope burns on her wrists. So they grabbed her, figured they'd make it look like a random kidnapping. Until Bristle led you there? Quinn reached down to scratch the dog's ears as she wandered back inside. She didn't just save Junie, she exposed their whole operation. And now they're scrambling. Charles pulled out his notebook. 3 properties sold in the last week, 2 more suddenly under renovation. They're moving things around, trying to cover their tracks. Quinn stood abruptly, determination flashing across her features. Then we follow the money. Every property sale, every shell company. There has to be a pattern. She grabbed her laptop. My friend in real estate records owes me a favor. Give me an hour. Charles watched her work, fingers flying across the keyboard as she cross-referenced dates and names. The afternoon light slanted through dusty windows, painting everything in shades of gold. Bristle lay at Quinn's feet, as if lending her strength. An hour stretched into 2, then 3. Finally, Quinn sat back, eyes bright with discovery. Look at this, she said, turning the screen. Every property they've used follows the same pattern, bought through different companies, but the initial funding always traces back to offshore accounts linked to Boone's main holding company. And here's the kicker. They've been moving everything toward this cluster of properties in the northeast corner. Charles studied the map she'd marked. That's all swampland. Who'd think to look there? Exactly. And guess what else? Quinn pulled up another document. Satellite photos from 6 months ago show new construction out there. Official permits say it's for agricultural storage. But look at the layout. The overhead view showed a sprawling compound, carefully hidden among the trees. Multiple buildings, security fencing, even what looked like kennels. This has to be it, Charles breathed. Their new central operation, where they're consolidating everything, including Bristle's puppies. At the sound of his voice, Bristle's head snapped up. She patted over, fixing them with that haunting, intelligent stare. We're close, girl, Quinn murmured, stroking the dog's head. We're going to find them. Charles felt the weight of responsibility settle deeper on his shoulders. They had the pieces now, the property records, the transport permits, the pattern of corruption that led straight to Eldrick Boone. But proving it would mean taking on the most powerful man in the parish, along with whatever dark enterprise he was protecting. Bristle pressed against his leg and he felt her trembling, not with fear, but with that same desperate urgency that had drawn him into this case. Her puppies were out there, somewhere in that swampland compound, and time was running out. We need to move carefully, he said, meeting Quinn's determined gaze. One wrong step, and Boone's people will make everything disappear, including us. Quinn nodded, her face set with quiet resolve. Then we don't step wrong. We gather every piece of evidence, build an ironclad case. She looked down at Bristle. We owe it to her, and to June, and to every other victim they've silenced. The German shepherd's tail thumped once against the floor, a sound like distant thunder. Outside, storm clouds were gathering over the Louisiana bayou, but in Quinn's clinic, the hunt was just beginning. The tip came just after midnight, an anonymous call about suspicious activity at one of Boone's remote properties. Charles and Quinn followed winding back roads in his patrol car, Bristle alert in the back seat. The German shepherd's ears perked forward as they approached the isolated compound. Look there, Quinn whispered, pointing to fresh tire tracks in the mud. Someone's been here recently. Charles killed the engine and lights, letting darkness envelope them. The air hung thick with humidity as they crept toward a cluster of metal buildings. Bristle moved ahead, her nose working the ground. Her sudden low growl made them freeze. Movement by the kennels, Charles breathed, drawing his service weapon. The compound felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. Quinn touched his arm. "Charles, I don't like this." The floodlights exploded on, blinding them. Shouts erupted as dark figures emerged from behind the buildings. Charles recognized Boone's security chief among them, along with 3 burly handlers. "Well, if it ain't our nosy deputy," the security chief drawled, leveling a shotgun. "Should have stayed out of it, Raleigh." "Drop your weapons," Charles commanded, pushing Quinn behind him. "This is official police business." Harsh laughter answered him. "Not anymore, it ain't. Boss says you're interfering with private property." The man's grin turned ugly. "Shame about the accident that's about to happen to you two." Everything exploded into chaos. As the first shot cracked out, Bristle launched herself at the nearest handler, latching onto his arm. The man screamed, his gun flying. Charles shoved Quinn toward cover behind a concrete barrier, just as white-hot pain blazed through his shoulder. "Charles!" Quinn cried out as he stumbled. Gritting his teeth against the agony, Charles returned fire. One of Boone's men went down clutching his leg. The security chief ducked behind a truck, shotgun blasting. Concrete chips stung Charles's face. Through the mayhem, desperate whining caught his attention. There, in the nearest kennel building, weak light showed metal cages and moving shapes inside. "The puppies!" Quinn gasped, following his gaze. Bristle had fought free of the handler and now stood guard over them, hackles raised, teeth bared in a snarl. The sight gave Charles strength. Ignoring his wounded shoulder, he laid down covering fire, while Quinn darted to the kennel door. "Got them," she called. 6 puppies, all alive." A bullet whined past Charles's ear. The security chief was trying to flank them. But as the man moved, he knocked over a gas can. Liquid spread across the ground, inching toward sparking electrical equipment. "Fire!" Charles shouted. "Quinn, get the puppies out now." She emerged cradling 3 puppies while Bristle herded the others. Orange flames were already licking up the kennel wall. Smoke began to fill the air. The security chief saw his chance, breaking cover with the shotgun raised. But Bristle was faster. She hit him low and hard, sending both sprawling. The shotgun discharged harmlessly into the air. "Fall back," Charles ordered. His vision swam from blood loss, but adrenaline kept him moving. "To the car, quick!" They ran through thickening smoke. Puppies gathered close. Behind them, the fire spread rapidly, consuming dry wood and old fuel. Shouts and curses followed them into the darkness. Quinn helped Charles into the passenger seat while Bristle bounded in with her reunited puppies. Tires sprayed gravel as they peeled away, leaving the burning compound and Boone's men behind. "Your shoulder," Quinn said, steering one-handed while pressing a cloth against his wound. "Keep driving," Charles managed through clenched teeth. "Don't stop until we're clear." In the back seat, Bristle curled protectively around her whimpering puppies. Her intelligent eyes met Charles's in the rearview mirror. Despite the pain and danger, he felt a fierce surge of triumph. They'd done it. They'd rescued her babies. But Charles knew this was far from over. Boone wouldn't let this go. The attack and fire would only make him more dangerous. As they sped through the Louisiana night, Charles could only hope they'd gathered enough evidence before it all went up in flames. His shoulder throbbed in time with his racing heart. Quinn's hand found his, squeezing gently. Together, they'd crossed a line tonight, one there was no coming back from. The only way now was forward. The morning sun filtered through Quinn's clinic windows as she changed Charles's bandages. His shoulder wound, though painful, had thankfully been a clean through and through. He winced as she applied fresh gauze. "Sorry," Quinn murmured, her gentle hands working with practiced efficiency. "But you're healing well. No signs of infection." "Thanks to your care," Charles said softly. Their eyes met briefly before both looked away. In the corner, Bristle nursed her 6 puppies on a thick blanket, her watchful gaze never leaving them. "They're all gaining weight," Quinn reported, nodding toward the puppies. "Despite what they've been through, they're surprisingly healthy. Bristle kept them alive somehow. Charles shifted carefully to look at the evidence spread across Quinn's desk. Blood-stained shipping crates with identification tags still attached, breeding records hastily grabbed during their escape, and photographs documenting the compound's layout. His shoulder protested, but he pushed through the pain. "These shipping manifests," he said, holding up a water-damaged ledger. "They show regular deliveries between Boone's properties. But look at the weights listed. Way too heavy for just dog food and supplies." Quinn leaned over his good shoulder, her auburn hair brushing his arm. "And these ID tags, they match reports of stolen show dogs from 3 different states. Professional breeders who suddenly lost their best animals." "Boone's been running this operation for years," Charles growled, "using stolen dogs for breeding, then disposing of them when they're no longer useful." His fist clenched around the papers. Quinn touched his arm gently. "We'll get him, Charles. This is solid evidence." A sharp bark from Bristle made them both turn. The German Shepherd had left her puppies and was pawing at the clinic's back door, whining urgently. "She wants out," Quinn said, already moving to open it. "Something's bothering her." The moment the door opened, Bristle shot into the small fenced yard behind the clinic. She circled the perimeter, nose to the ground, before focusing intently on one corner near an old oak tree. Her paws began to dig frantically. Charles and Quinn exchanged looks before following. The morning air was thick with humidity as they watched Bristle excavate the soft earth with single-minded purpose. "Wait," Quinn gasped as something emerged from the dirt. She pulled on latex gloves from her pocket and carefully brushed away more soil. A small metal lockbox lay partially exposed. With trembling fingers, Quinn pried it open. Inside, protected from the elements, they found more damning evidence. Photographs of Boone's operation, including images of his security team moving caged dogs between properties. Financial records detailed payments to local officials. Most disturbing were handwritten notes describing how to handle witnesses who discovered too much. "This is it," Charles breathed, leafing through the documents. "This ties everything together. The breeding ring, the corruption, even Junie's abduction. Someone must have buried this here when the heat started coming down." Quinn's face was pale but determined. "The clinic's previous owner, he disappeared suddenly last year. Said he was retiring, but no one knew where he went. He must have hidden this before." She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Bristle sat watching them, her intelligent eyes seeming to understand the importance of what she'd uncovered. Charles reached out to scratch behind her ears. "Good girl," he murmured. "You just helped us nail them." Back inside, Quinn organized the new evidence while Charles made careful copies of everything. His shoulder ached, but the pain felt distant compared to the satisfaction of finally having proof that could bring Boone down. "I've got a friend at the state police," he said, sealing the documents in an envelope. "Someone I trust completely. This needs to go straight to them, bypass the local department entirely." Quinn nodded, then surprised him by taking his hand. "You did it, Charles. You believed Bristle when no one else would. You followed your instincts even when it nearly got you killed." "We did it," he corrected softly, squeezing her fingers. "I couldn't have gotten this far without you." From her corner, Bristle watched them with what almost looked like approval, her puppies sleeping peacefully against her side. The morning sun painted the clinic in warm light, and for the first time since this all began, Charles felt real hope. Justice was finally within reach. Charles straightened his uniform collar, wincing as the movement pulled at his injured shoulder. The manila envelope felt heavy in his hands as he strode through the sheriff's department, drawing curious glances from fellow deputies. He didn't knock before entering Sheriff Matthews' office. "Deputy Raleigh," Matthews said without looking up from his desk, "I believe you're still on medical leave." "These need your immediate attention, sir." Charles dropped the envelope onto the polished oak desk. Evidence linking Eldrick Boone to organized criminal activities across 3 states. Matthews finally looked up, his weathered face carefully neutral. "We've already discussed this, Deputy. The Harlan girls' case is closed." Then you won't mind explaining these to the state police. Charles spread out the photographs and documents across the desk. Stolen show dogs, illegal breeding operations, witness intimidation, and financial records showing payments to local law enforcement. The sheriff's face tightened as he examined a particularly damning photograph showing his own signature on one of Boone's permits. Where did you get these? Does it matter? They're authenticated and copies are already in safe hands. Charles leaned forward, his voice low. You can bury this and wait for the state investigation to destroy this department, or you can do your job and help us bring him in. Matthews was silent for a long moment, studying the evidence with increasingly troubled eyes. Boone has friends in high places. Boone has evidence that could send those friends to prison, Charles corrected. How many of them will stay loyal once this breaks? The radio on Matthews' desk crackled to life. Sheriff, Mr. Boone's office called. They're confirming your attendance at tonight's charity gala. Charles saw the exact moment Matthews made his decision. The older man's shoulders slumped slightly as he reached for his phone. Get me Captain Reynolds at State Police Headquarters. While Matthews made the call, Charles texted Quinn. It's happening. Keep monitoring the clinic exits. The response came quickly. 2 suspicious vehicles already circling. Bristle and Pups secure in the back room. State police detective arrived 10 minutes ago. Over the next hour, the sheriff's office transformed into a command center. State police investigators arrived discreetly, examining evidence and coordinating with federal authorities. Charles watched Matthews closely, but the sheriff seemed committed now that he'd chosen a side. Boone's hosting his annual charity gala tonight at the River Oaks Country Club, Matthews explained to the assembled team. 300 guests, heavy security, and according to our sources, a private helicopter on standby. He's planning to run, Charles said. The gala's his cover. The state police captain nodded. We'll have teams at every exit and air support standing by. But we need to take him quietly. Any hint of trouble and he'll bolt, probably with hostages. I'll be inside, Matthews added. He's expecting me and several other department heads. We can keep him occupied while teams get in position. Charles studied the country club's floor plans. Quinn says his security detail has doubled in the last 2 days. They'll be watching for law enforcement. Which is why you'll be there as a guest, the captain said. You and Ms. Baylor both received legitimate invitations as thanks for saving the Harlan girl. Boone won't expect you to attend while injured. He'll be watching us, Charles warned. Count on it. That's why you'll be our distraction. Keep his security focused on you while our teams move into position. The planning continued as afternoon faded into evening. Charles changed into a dark suit that Quinn had helped him select, careful of his injured shoulder. His service weapon felt awkward in the shoulder holster under his jacket. His phone buzzed with another text from Quinn. Dressed and ready. State police have Bristle and family secured at a safe location. Are you sure about this? Charles typed back, No choice. See you there. The sun was setting as Charles drove toward River Oaks, the Spanish moss hanging from ancient oaks casting long shadows across the road. He could see the country club lit up ahead, cars already lining the circular drive as elegantly dressed guests arrived. His radio crackled softly. All units in position. Remember, we need him inside the building. Let him start his speech before we move. Charles adjusted his tie one final time, checking that his wire was hidden. Through the windshield, he could see Quinn waiting near the entrance in a deep green dress that made her auburn hair glow in the evening light. She smiled as he approached, taking his arm. Security's heavy, she whispered. At least 20 men I can see. State police count 30, Charles murmured back, plus whatever he's got hidden inside. Ready? Quinn's grip on his arm tightened slightly. Let's end this. Together, they climbed the steps toward the brightly lit entrance. Through the windows, Charles could see Eldrick Boone holding court in the main ballroom, champagne in hand, his confident smile never reaching his eyes. The trap was set. Now they just had to spring it before Boone could make his escape. The gala's elegant facade crumbled in an instant. As Boone reached the crescendo of his speech about community service, dozens of state police officers emerged from every entrance. Camera flashes erupted as local news crews, tipped off anonymously, captured the moment his confident smile faltered. "Eldrick Boone," the state police captain's voice boomed through the ballroom, "you're under arrest for kidnapping, criminal conspiracy, and multiple counts of animal cruelty." Chaos erupted. Guests gasped and backed away as Boone's security team reached for weapons, freezing when they saw themselves surrounded. Charles kept his position near the east exit, watching Boone's face transform from shocked disbelief to cold fury. "This is ridiculous," Boone snarled, but his eyes darted toward the kitchen's service entrance. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "We know exactly who you are." Charles stepped forward, his shoulders still aching. "And so do they." The ballroom doors opened wide. Led by Quinn, a group of people entered. Families whose pets had vanished, workers who'd been threatened into silence, and at the center, little Junie Harlan holding her mother's hand. The girl's eyes were clear now, her voice steady as she pointed at Boone. "He's the one who told them to take me," she said, "because I saw the hurt dogs." Boone lunged toward the kitchen, but Matthews was there with 2 deputies. The sheriff's expression was granite hard as he personally clicked the handcuffs into place. Camera flashes intensified, capturing the moment the town's most powerful man was brought low. Outside, more reporters had gathered. Charles watched through the windows as Boone was led down the club's grand steps, his perfectly tailored tuxedo incongruous with the silver handcuffs. The news crews surged forward, microphones extended. "Mr. Boone, how do you respond to allegations of running an illegal breeding ring? What about reports of connections to dogfighting operations? Did you order the kidnapping of Junie Harlan?" Boone kept his head high, but his mask had cracked. Everyone could see the truth now. Quinn appeared at Charles's side, her green dress rustling. The State Veterinary Board just arrived at the compound. They're rescuing 37 dogs and gathering evidence. It's over. "Not quite," Charles said softly. "Come with me." They drove to Quinn's clinic, where state police protection teams had kept Bristle and her puppies safe. The German Shepherd's transformation was remarkable. Her coat gleamed, her eyes were bright, and her body had filled out to a healthy weight. She lay contentedly in a large pen, nursing 6 squirming puppies. "Look at you, brave girl." Quinn knelt beside the pen. "You did it. You saved them all." Bristle's tail wagged as she gazed up at them. Charles felt the weight of the past weeks lifting as he watched the small family. This was what justice looked like, not just handcuffs and headlines, but healing and hope restored. The next morning, Charles's phone wouldn't stop ringing. News outlets wanted interviews about the deputy who'd cracked the case. The sheriff offered him reinstatement at full rank with a promotion. The mayor wanted to give him a key to the city. He turned them all down. "Are you sure about this?" Quinn asked as they sat in her clinic's back garden, watching Bristle play with her puppies in the sunshine. "You could write your own ticket now." Charles smiled, feeling more peace than he had in years. "I'm sure. I'm thinking of starting a private investigation service, specializing in animal welfare cases. There are more Boones out there, and more animals who need help." Quinn's eyes sparkled. "Need a partner? I know a vet who's pretty good at collecting evidence." "I was hoping you'd say that." Inside the clinic, the waiting room television showed footage of more families coming forward with stories of Boone's crimes. The breeding ring had tentacles throughout 3 states. Federal authorities were now involved, following money trails and conspiracy leads. But out here in Quinn's garden, watching Bristle teach her puppies to play, none of that seemed as important as the simple victory of survival. The German Shepherd had never given up, had fought through pain and fear to save both her puppies and an innocent child. She was living proof that even the deepest wounds could heal. "The adoption applications are already pouring in," Quinn said, gesturing to the puppies. "But Bristle's staying with me. After everything she's been through, she deserves a permanent home." Charles watched as one of the puppies tumbled over its siblings to reach Bristle, who gently nuzzled it back into place. "Think she'd like a bigger yard? My place backs up to the bayou." Quinn's hand found his. "I think she'd love that." Together, they sat in the warm Louisiana morning, planning a future built on the foundation of justice they'd fought so hard to achieve. Bristle dozed in the sunshine, her puppy safe beside her, a living symbol of resilience and hope. 3 months after Boone's arrest, the Louisiana summer had mellowed into autumn. Charles sat on the wraparound porch of his bayou home, watching Quinn work with a nervous rescue dog in the yard. Bristle lounged nearby, her watchful eyes following her 6 growing puppies as they romped through fallen leaves. "Easy now." Quinn's voice was gentle as she guided a trembling Australian shepherd through basic commands. "You're safe here, Riley." The dog had been rescued from one of Boone's other properties, and like many of their cases, needed patient rehabilitation before adoption. Charles smiled, remembering how different Bristle had looked that scorching day on the back road. Now her coat gleamed with health, and her eyes held peace instead of desperation. She'd become their unofficial assistant trainer, somehow knowing exactly which rescue dogs needed a gentle nuzzle or a playful bow to coax them out of their shells. Inside the house, photos told their story. Bristle's puppies growing week by week, Quinn teaching Charles proper bandaging techniques, their first successful adoption placement. And in pride of place, a framed newspaper clipping showing Junie Harlan hugging Bristle at the courthouse, both of them survivors helping each other heal. "Look who's getting brave," Quinn called out. Charles watched as Riley cautiously accepted a treat from her hand. Small victories, but they added up. Just last week, they'd received a video from one of their first rehabilitated dogs playing with his new family. The work wasn't flashy or headline-grabbing like the Boone case, but it mattered. Quinn joined him on the porch, her auburn hair catching the afternoon light. "Riley's going to make it," she said, settling beside him. "Another few weeks and she'll be ready for forever home." "Just like you knew Bristle would make it," Charles replied, taking her hand. Their relationship had grown naturally, built on shared purpose and quiet understanding. No grand gestures needed, just the steady knowledge that they were exactly where they were meant to be. Bristle's ears perked up as a car approached. It was Sarah Harlan, Junie's mother, right on time for their weekly visit. The therapy sessions had been Quinn's idea, letting Junie help socialize the rescue puppies while working through her own trauma. The girl, who'd once been too frightened to speak, now laughed as Bristle's puppies swarmed to greet her. "Miss Quinn," Junie called out, "can I show them the new trick today?" "Of course, sweetheart." Quinn squeezed Charles's hand before joining her student. Charles watched as Junie demonstrated the gentle training techniques they'd taught her. The smallest puppy, whom she'd named Star, followed her commands perfectly. In moments like these, the weight of his old life in law enforcement felt very far away. Their rescue training program was small but growing. Word had spread about their success with traumatized animals, and they now had a waiting list of volunteers. Even the sheriff's department occasionally called for their expertise with seized animals, though Charles preferred to keep his distance from official channels. Bristle rose and stretched, padding over to rest her head on Charles's knee. He scratched behind her ears, marveling at how one dog's courage had sparked such change. Because of her, dozens of animals had been saved from Boone's operation. Because of her, Junie had been rescued before worse harm could come. And because of her, Charles had found his true calling and his heart's home with Quinn. "Deputy Raleigh," Junie called out, using his old title despite his corrections. "Watch what Star can do now." He joined them in the yard, where the autumn air was sweet with promise. Quinn's shoulder brushed his as they watched Junie guide the puppy through a series of commands. Star's siblings tumbled nearby, while Bristle maintained her serene supervision. This was justice too, Charles thought. Not just the satisfaction of seeing Boone in prison, but the quiet healing that came after. Every rescued dog who learned to trust again, every child who found strength in helping others, every small victory against fear and cruelty, it all mattered. Quinn seemed to read his thoughts. Quite a change from patrol duty, isn't it? Best decision I never planned to make, he replied, watching Bristle gather her puppies with gentle nudges. All because one brave dog wouldn't take no for an answer. The setting sun painted the bayou in warm gold, while somewhere in the distance, a mockingbird sang. Charles felt Quinn's hands slip into his again, and Bristle pressed against their legs, and he knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where they all belonged. Thank you for watching. If even one moment stayed with you, don't forget to subscribe. I'll be here tomorrow with another story that speaks to the heart.